a member of the executive committee, so that's what you're stuck with. And I want to welcome the public that's on, and we have some people on the, okay, welcome to you, and appreciate your being here. The public portion of our board meeting is, it will be relatively short. We don't have a lot of business that we need to do before we go into executive session, but we will get to that. We will start, as we do our meetings, by having the mission, purpose, and values read. Ray.
Hello, everybody. We'll start with the mission.
I didn't do that. Who did that? Where are we on that?
While we're getting Frank back online, the mission of KDHX is to build community through media. The purpose, KDHX uses power of music and education to engage and unite individuals and community. The value, responsible stewardship. We believe that the proper management of the organizational resources, people, things, and ideas is the best interest of the organization's long-term health and sustainability. Unwavering independence. We believe that KDHX independence is at the core of the ability to create content and showcase independent music without influence and commercial interest. Intentional partnership. We believe the success of KDHX requires partnership between staff, volunteers, donors, and listeners. Unyielding integrity. We believe that KDHX is and must be people-centered, transparent, and honest. Boundless discovery. We believe that KDHX is built on music and education facilitated through individual joy and discovery. Contagious passion. We believe that KDHX encourages passion in individuals and leverages that passion into positive community building. Unbridled joy. We believe KDHX should inspire ecstatic experiences.
Thank you very much. So this is the first time this group has attended a meeting together as a regular board meeting. So I want us to start the meeting by everybody introducing themselves and just telling us one thing about yourself that you would like your colleagues here to know. So, Paul, will you start by introducing yourself?
I will. Paul Dever. And one thing that I want you to know. Something emblematic. I have a unicycle, but I don't know how to ride it yet.
Amazing. That's a pretty good fact. Yeah, that is a good fact. I mean, you've been doing that for years and you've never...
I'm no comment.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to rephrase it.
I still don't know how to ride it.
How am I supposed to follow that up?
I
know. I'm like, my life is very boring by comparison, apparently. Karen Haddix, nice to meet you all. See, one very fun thing. I'm a former college cheerleader and dancer. Most people don't know that. Yeah.
That's what we went now.
Yeah. So that was fun. Yeah, that's fun. Not unicycle fun, but fun.
Except you did the cheerleading and dancing, apparently.
Yeah.
Better balance than I do, and I could probably ride the unicycle.
Well, many years ago, yes. I don't know about now, but yes.
Gee whiz, you heard of a 3-time loser. I happen to be a 3-time winner because I've received the proclamation from the city of St. Louis for October 21st, which is Gee Whiz Day. Also got resolution from the Senate and the House of Representatives. So
we have a star amidst.
Yes.
it's a bunch of stars. It's only one sun.
That's good.
My turn.
Yes.
I'm gonna blow y'all mind with this. and it does not have anything to do with music. Songs make it better known as DJ Lady Job. You say one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know all 66 Bibles names.
You do. You do. Like all the verses of the Bible.
No, just names.
Just the name.
Just the names.
Okay. I like that.
Just the names.
Did you learn by singing it?
I had learned as a Bible class.
We sang it.
It's really.
I don't really know what the words are, but what the books are, but I can see these syllables.
Okay.
That's great.
I try to sing it now.
Well, I think you should prepare that for your show.
Oh,
We'll tune in on Saturday.
Yeah.
I get tortured enough by him, so we.
Love it. Great.
I'm
Make
Jeff
a Bible
Farmer.
scholar.
Yes, I love it. I'm Jeff Farmer. I think I might be addicted to Radio Riot. That's a possibility as well. It's a kind of one of those good things. And I'm trying to think. I've been a listener to KDHX forever. KDHX, more correctly pronouncing. And might be the oldest listener to KDHX at this point.
Not a chance.
So I will pass on to that.
Awesome.
wow.
Trying to think what you might not know already. I'm a working musician and a special education teacher by day. Yeah.
I'm Courtney Dowdle. I just got back from Kansas City, where I went to see a band called the Marines, which is this Brazilian type band, which is fantastic. I learned about from Radio Rio, and I'm gonna really miss that show.
It's a good show.
Sweet.
My name is Ray Finney, and I'll tell you a couple things. I used to be a high school cheerleader.
All right.
Aggressive.
No.
Okay.
I just bought my son a roller coaster, and my wife does not like it that I bought one.
You bought your son a roller coaster, like a
The roller coaster thing is big, it's huge.
It's 8 months old.
that he can ride.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I like to trade stocks during the day. My second guilty pleasure to HGTV.
Okay.
Love it.
Sounds like
Now
more.
you know a lot of things about me. Nobody else knows.
Love it. I'm Kelly Wells. Let me think. When I was 13, we lived in Fort Worth, Texas for a year and a half. And somehow, I don't know, I doubt this is my idea. I ended up entering the adult cookie baking contest at the Texas State Fair, which is the largest state fair in the country. And I won a gold ribbon.
Nice.
What'd you cook?
It was something called the everything cookie that I invented.
I would have ate it.
I don't make it anymore, but yeah. That is a very little known fact. I barely remember that fact about myself, but it is indeed true. When you were young. My mother has the recipe. She still makes it.
Were you in junior high?
I was in middle school.
Where did you go to junior high?
It was like the neighborhood middle school in Fort Worth. I don't even know if I remember the name right.
Twain.
Oh yeah, because you're from Texas.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm definitely not from there, but I just lived there.
These cowgirls.
All right, Senator, what you got?
Let me think. Okay, so this is gonna make me sound really boring. It's okay.
Okay.
So if I'm not listening to KDHX or what I need to do for the station, one of my guilty pleasures is studying I'm a Shakespearean doubter, and I study the authorship question.
How did I not know this about you? I'm so glad we did this exercise.
Yes. I wish I had known you in high school when I had to take that test.
He didn't even write this
might have
down.
flunked it.
Yeah, right. Amazing.
So, how many different authors do you think there are?
I'm kind of settled on one.
Ooh.
Bacon.
Yeah, Francis Bacon.
Interesting.
No?
Yeah, 100%.
Who's the Earl of Oxford?
That's good.
Mm.
That's that baby just so jumps to
Fascinating.
congratulations. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Okay, we just have some reports. Kelly is going to do her executive director report. All right, well, we will save any questions for afterwards.
Okay. So as I like to do, when we do these executive director reports, as the veterans know, we tend to associate them, the things I'm reporting with the top priorities of our strategic plan. So I'll do that tonight. So I'll talk about things in relation to those top 3 priorities, which of course are engage and expand audience, build anti-racist capacity, increase financial management and stewardship. For engage and expand audience, so one of the main things we've done in this last little year to do that is to expand our program schedule, as y'all know. So we do have a full program schedule, which is not something we always have. It's for the first time in a lot of years. We have a couple of shows that haven't started yet, but everybody's trained up and going. Today, of course, we do Miss Radio Rio. I would highly suggest turning into DJ Snap the Bridge on Tuesdays for his Brazilian show. But today we did have Lydia Gonzalez started up Alma Latina in the place Latin Soul, in the place where Radio Rio was. Lydia was a DJ back in the day and has come back to us with a bilingual, bicultural show. So that's an example of some of the new shows that we've added to the airways. We had a very conscious effort to make sure we did have some bilingual shows, and obviously different types of music than we have sometimes had. So we're very proud of our program schedule and the continued new shows that we're offering there. Another element of engaging and expanding audience is, of course, connecting with people in person. So we did implement our community engagement plan this year. That was a plan that was created with a working group of volunteers and staff to identify the places we wanted to put in some resources as far as showing up in person. So what we did is we started that engagement in the events we would be at based on events our volunteers suggested to us. And we put special emphasis on areas where we had not been as present and where we heard from our volunteers, hey, y'all haven't been in my community or you haven't been in my neighborhood. So we've especially been at events this last spring, summer, fall, in some right here in the district, but also in Metro East, a lot of events in Metro East and then North City and North County. So those have been exciting. That it's given us an opportunity to connect with folks who have never heard of KDHX before, and almost every one of those events have led to connections of other events that we've been a part of, or other folks and nonprofits that we can connect with for things like our community connections features and spotlights, which is our on-air announcements that we do highlighting the work of nonprofits in St. Louis. So that's been another focus for community connections. We've reached out to about over 500 local nonprofits in our region, letting them know how KDHX can support the work that they're doing, which can be as basic as their events on our arts and events calendar, and then they can apply for a community connections spotlight, which is the 2 weeks of announcements that we do highlighting the mission and the work that those nonprofits are doing. We've had an overwhelming response to that. We are booked out for many, many months, which is awesome, and we're actually adding new spots on air so that we can continue to highlight the work of local nonprofits through our community connections. I will in this section report too on the Community Advisory Board. So we had our Community Advisory Board meeting last week. That is a group that meets a couple of times a year. The purpose of that group is to advise the staff and the board on whether the programming and the top-level policies of the organization are serving the community. So that at those meetings, we report out to the Community Advisory Board, and they usually take up a question as far as something around our programming or around what KDHX is doing. And this time, the question hypothetical. So we did a little exercise imagining that in 20 years, KDHX wins a Lifetime Achievement Award. And it was the job of the Community Advisory Board to write the description for why we were receiving it. What things has KDHX done? What have we accomplished? How have we changed our community? How have we made real change in the world that would, lend itself to a Lifetime Achievement Award? It was a really inspirational conversation, and a lot of folks had a lot of wonderful ideas, and it was interesting because at the end of the day, what came out of that was almost exactly what our purpose statement is, our current purpose statement. Oh, I forgot. One of the caveats for the discussion was you couldn't use the word radio or station. So envisioning effects without using radio or station in this sense of, what KDHX can accomplish. So our purpose statement, of course, as Ray read earlier, is KDHX uses the power of music and education to engage and unite individuals and communities. You notice that purpose statement doesn't have radio or station in it, so it was an appropriate foundation for the conversation. So what came out of that was a lot of conversations about unity. That word unity came up a lot. The idea that KDHX is so much a part of the social fabric of the region and all of the communities that make up the region, that we have united one of our country's most physically and racially segregated cities in coming together around music. So music came up a whole lot as a way to do that, but then also the idea of education. So the idea of the conversations that are happening on air, the conversations that some of our new writers are starting to have on our website and in other platforms. And then obviously lots of our DJs these days are incorporating conversations into their music shows as well. So it was really interesting, this idea of, KDHX is successful when we fulfill the thing we've already said is the thing we want to do. So that was an inspirational conversation. Moving on to the second category of the strategic plan, so build anti-racist capacity. There's a lot of foundational elements to that have been accomplished over the last few years, but one of the ones I'll highlight today is the idea of diversifying our volunteer base. So I'm happy to report that right now nearly 70% of our on-air volunteers come from traditionally underrepresented backgrounds. Those demographics or identities would include things like age and race and gender and country of origin, member of the LGBTQ community, English as your first language, things like that. So we've moved to nearly 70% of our on-air volunteers representing those identities, which means that we are certainly seeing a shift in who our audience is and who is listening. So, we may think of expanding audience as a numbers game, but I think we also need to look at it as far as expanding into different communities and more representation on air so that as people listen, they can hear and see themselves reflected in the programming of KDHX, either in the music or in the volunteers who are presenting that music or programming. Another thing that we've been able to put into place that came out of the strategic plan as we bring on new volunteers, of course, is we updated all of our hiring protocols and our policies. So, these new folks we brought them on with those new policies and with a real focus on how we communicate with each other, how we interact with each other, what it looks like to, what our behaviors in the building are. And a lot of that, those recommendations and protocols were put into place by the operationalizing equity working group. Some of y'all were on there. That was a staff board working group that also had volunteers on it to help set the tone for what we wanted to do as we brought on new people to KDHX and how we can make sure that we were doing that in an equitable way. The other thing I will highlight here is this year we formed a volunteer council to basically be in parallel to the Community Advisory Board. The volunteer council has a similar mission as far as advising the staff on programming in particular, but also policies and other issues, concerns, decisions that affect volunteers. together. So that's a group of 12 volunteers that meet every other month and take up various issues. So that is that pertain to volunteers in particular, and to KDHX's programming. So that was another way that we wanted to make sure we have mechanisms outside of just our general policies and other communication for volunteers to give input on KDHX's policies and programming, the things that affect them. Moving on to the third category for the executive director report here, and the strategic plan is increased financial management and stewardship. So I will highlight a couple of things there. So one of the main things in that priority, one of the main goals, was to make the switch to community-centered fundraising. We talked about this a lot, but I will restate here the definition of community-centered fundraising. Community-centric fundraising is a fundraising model that is grounded in equity and social justice. We prioritize the entire community over individual organizations, foster a sense of belonging and interdependence, present our work not as individual transactions, but holistically, and encourage mutual support between nonprofits. That's the overall definition as created originally by the CCF community. KDHX is still evolving into exactly what this looks like for us. There are 10 principles associated with community-centric fundraising that can be applied to organizations and also applied in a way that works for the organization. So it's kind of an ever-evolving model, but we've relied heavily on input from volunteers, from donors, from community members, as we continue to involve the model and what it means for KDHX. So one of the things that came out of that model, which has basic things like we value time in the same way that we value money. A donor who's able and has the capacity to give $10,000 is valued the same as a person who has the capacity to give $10, or perhaps even the person who does not have the capacity to give it all. But one of the things that we've changed recently that has been that came out of that community-centric fundraising model, but also was recommended to us by many of our volunteers, was to make donating to KDHX more accessible on platforms where people were already used to sharing money. So not everyone is used to going to a website or has the time or impetus to go to a website, fill in all the information, and submit a donation that way. So we started a pretty concentrated effort to encourage people to give on other money exchange platforms that they might already be using. So Venmo and PayPal and Cash App, as well as on our website. So we've had the DJs in particular helping us with reminding folks like, hey, if you like what you hear today, like you can support KDHX at any time. Send us, Cash App. And people are responding. I can tell who's on the air and that they just asked by the notifications that come in. And I have to say, this has been a pretty amazingly successful program so far. We do believe this is grounded in equity, that we need to be able to make donating and sharing funds accessible across different platforms. We have folks who have been giving for 20 years that are making their annual gift through one of these platforms. They're Venmoing us their annual gift, even though perhaps in the past they would have written a check or gone for, to our online donation form. And then a lot of new donors. We're seeing, not the majority, but I would say about 50% of our new donors who are giving through these platforms. And we can tell that a lot of it has to do with the emotion that they're feeling at the moment, the power of that music and education. They're hearing a great conversation on Tangazo and wanting to contribute to the work of KDHX. So that's been really exciting. So we're seeing that kind of across the board from folks who are new, folks who have been giving for a long time, and how they're giving. So we're excited to have been able to expand that way. And I think there's a lot more room for innovation and expansion in the future. I think it's kind of the tip of the iceberg with how we can reimagine philanthropy and making that accessible to communities by starting to offer on platforms like this. Another thing I will report on here is just our Turn It Up campaign. So as y'all know, we did our 60-day Turn It Up campaign from August to mid-October. That was a successful campaign. We exceeded both our donor goal and our number goal, our dollar goal for that campaign, and that culminated in our birthday campaign, which was a campaign within a campaign. That was the last week or so $10,000 in that week leading up to KDHX's 37th birthday. So a lot of the comments we're receiving from donors definitely have a forward-facing, futuristic look, which has been inspirational. I've shared some of those with y'all and will continue to do so because almost every time people are donating, they're telling us why, especially if they're using some of these new platforms because it's easy to just type that in. So we're hearing from a lot of folks about why they're giving. So those are our three categories right there, and those are my top level reports for this.
Okay. So now, does anyone have any questions about topics covered by Kelly? Yes,
I
ma'am.
do have a suggestion. Now, what my father them did, that was a long time ago, and it may still work, with how they did with the community, they went like to the city halls, like to the mayors and the whatever, everybody that worked in the city, just people just to find out what was going on in the community, and that's how they knew, and a lot of them that's how a lot of them partnerships and
Okay.
like that. So, I don't know if just a suggestion, see if it still work. I know that was a long time ago, but it may
Still
work.
have city halls, we still have things going on.
It may work.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, do we have any numbers on the last pledge drive? Like, do we have hard numbers we could see?
So you're using the word pledge drive, and I'll course correct you there. We don't use the term pledge drive anymore, so we call it a fund drive because people give, they don't pledge like they used to. And then, so what we did, and we've done this for the last few years, we don't set particular goals for that week of drive. So if you're referring to the drive part, those goals are encompassed in what we typically use about a month-long campaign because it involves not just the on-air portion, but direct mail letters and other types of fundraising. So we have that as a whole encompassed. So that was the Turn It Up campaign. So that campaign raised about $62,000, and our goal for it was 50. Does that make sense? Like it's the whole campaign is the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask why we don't say pledge?
Well, so perhaps traditionally, if you think about public media, we would have called those pledge drives in the sense that we want you to call up and make a pledge that you will give. Well, over time, that has shifted where we want you to give. And so people are giving at the moment instead of pledging to give at some point in the future. So a little bit of it, it's an actual change, but it's also a little bit of semantics. So we moved away from saying pledge and with the sense of this is the money that we need to raise now. And of course, that term was used a lot back in the day when the only way, say, public radio or TV raised money really was those big drives you think of. They're calling on the phones and all that. Well, now fundraising has changed where we've got a renewal cycle. We're sending out letters every month. We're constantly fundraising on air instead of thinking of it as just in this capsule. So these days, so back probably 15, 20 years ago, probably 75 or 80% of the money KDHX would have been raised during those 2 to 3 on-air pledge drives. Now that number is about 20% of our overall fundraising because people are giving all across the year instead of just in those concentrated weeks. So we went away from using the term pledge drive almost a decade ago. So yeah. And most of our DJs don't list on there. They might slip up if they've been here for a while. But, yeah.
So I always wondered, sometimes they'd report, the pledges, the total of pledges.
Right,
And
yeah.
what was the percentage that came in?
Well, KDHX in some ways did better on those percentages, but public media overall, it is certainly not 100% of the pledges. So there's a bit of a loss there when you do it that way. So that's one of the reasons most folks have moved away from that.
Can I ask also about the Cash App? I had some questions. I just wanted to make sure that I do appreciate the community-centric fundraising principles. I appreciate that, and I think it's a great idea to make it more accessible for people to give in easily, but I did want to make sure that there were some considerations and some differences that come with that switch, to make sure that we considered that and worked that into our donor stewardship plan?
Absolutely. We have processes and protocols for how we thank donors, how we engage donors, how we offer them tax receipts if they want them, all of that. All of that is in place.
Yes, 50% of new donors is impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are
On-
we able
across
to
the three,
stay in
across the
contact with
three.
them? Are we able to put them in a
Well, two things I would say.
traditional?
There are ways to stay in contact with them, but I also think one of the opportunities here is to get out of our heads that the way we do philanthropy is to have all the information about someone. So that is a very traditional way of doing philanthropy where you definitely, when you want their phone number and their email and their mailing address so that you can continue to contact them. Not everyone is comfortable doing that all the time, and I think one of the beauties of this new way of doing it is, yes, we can thank them, and yes, if they share their names with us, we have them. They also don't have to, and that means that we don't have to re-solicit them by, say, sending them an email or sending them a direct mail piece. They can continue to hear the programming that they like on air. We can continue to use the on-air and other platforms like social media to remind people, hey, KDHX is listener supported, we want you to give, but not necessarily saying, we only want you to give if we can capture all the information about you that we want to have so we can solicit you in the future. So it's a philosophical shift, and that's part of the accessibility, is saying it doesn't have to be, some donors still want to give that way, some do not. And trends are showing that especially people under 40, 45, they're not giving that way, and they don't want to. And those trends are happening across the nonprofit sector and also in public media pretty heavily. So, yeah.
How much was that affected by the change in tax laws?
Some of it was very effective. Well, there's a whole big study about how that is directly affected to change. That has directly come out of change to tax laws. But I think also we're just seeing it in trends. Younger people exchange money and give in different ways. So, yeah, and we have to be able to be nimble in that way and say, it's okay if you want to cash out us $25 and we don't know everything about you to accept it, So, yeah. So it is a philosophical shift.
It does impact our ability to track our demographics of donors, though.
Not necessarily. I mean, we don't necessarily know all the demographics of donors when they give on our online form. We don't ask for those demographics. So we can track demographics based on other analytics. If we decide to start asking about specific demographics, we could. But we're not tracking those off of like Venmo or Cash App in any way different than we would from our online form. Because it doesn't reveal donor demographics.
Okay, any other questions about the report? Okay, we have reached the general public portion of the end of the general public portion of our meeting. So we want to thank everybody who attended on Zoom. Do we know how many people we had?
Again, I'll get that report after. It's way over there.
Oh, can't see that far. We do thank you for coming. We'll hope to see you again. Be aware of you again. Now we want to move into our closed session.
I move that we move into closed session.
I second.
Okay. So Paul has moved that we go into closed session, and Ray has seconded it, and that is a individual vote. So Ray, can you call the roll, please?
Okay. I will start with Joan.
Aye.
Okay. Ron, Julius Butts. Paul.
Aye.
Courtney.
Aye.
Jeffrey. Here.
Yes, I.
I agreeing that we're ending the public portion of, okay.
Somebody spends money.
And lastly, that leaves me, and I'll say aye.
Frank, I am so embarrassed and apologize that you should have spoken up, though. You want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Frank Flotron, and I cannot find my car keys yet. I sincerely apologize for not having joined this evening. I am a big fan of KDHX. I've been around and involved for a long time. I think they're one of the greatest institutions in the St. Louis area, and I play 5-string banjo.
I was hoping you'd get to the banjo part.
Yeah, right. Because we knew all that other stuff.
Tell me he gonna have to get a key shirt.
Frank, you could have called like OnStar or something.
He has a teacher.